Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some Meat Eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls because I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like him. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.
Hey, this is Anthony Warren, and you're listening to another Big Buck Breakdown by the Element Podcast.
Yeah. What's happening, all my woods people? It is mid-November, maybe even getting to late November at this point. But it's been a great month, but I mean, there's still some great days ahead, and to be included in that, our friends at Exodus Trail Cameras have some pretty cool things going on, KC, right?
They do, man. Their biggest sale of the year is coming up right now. For a lot of people, the rut November means the rut, but it also means Black Friday and Cyber Monday, which are both days I try to spend in the woods and not anywhere near a store. But in case you're into that sort of thing, you can even do this thing from your cell phone in the tree stand. But they're going to start the biggest sale of the year on Thanksgiving Day, and we don't really have any details for it because it's kind of secretive. But be sure and sign up for their newsletter, and you'll be able to get in on those deals when they happen, because it seems like there's only going to be a limited number of deals. I don't know how it works, but there's some kind of competitive nature going in there, which makes sense for those guys. Also, they did say that they got their cell phone cameras back in stock finally, so that's cool. If you got a big buck that you really need to put a pattern on, you can get those Exodus renders and use those as well. And those come with, just like all the other Exodus trail cameras, the 5-year no bullcorn warranty, which is an awesome thing to have. I've never had to use it, but it's good to know it's there, right? It's kind of what warranties are for, kind of help you feel good about it. And otherwise, pretty cool, man. Exodus, they actually, I've been checking my camera a good bit at home and got some raging bucks on my my Lift 2 here of late. And I would like to have another Lift 2 or 2 to put out as well. So I might have to capitalize on this little deal they've got going for Black Friday.
Sure. Well, I've got a Lift 2 that's out in Kansas right now that I'm hoping later this week you will check.
Oh,
and maybe even me.
I'm going to say that's probably second priority. Depending on wind directions, I might be in there hunting that stand and checking the camera after I've killed the big bucks. But it's not. I would imagine that card will be pulled this week. So I'm interested to hear of your timeline, your proposed timeline right now, because we haven't talked a ton the last couple of days. So what's happening right now? Oh my gosh, dude! Like it's 9 o'clock. I'm driving. I feel like I've been driving all day. I have. My wife got sick this weekend, and so I didn't get to leave really early this morning like I was wanting to. So I took kids to school and that kind of thing, and then decided that once I figured out that my wife was feeling better, I was like, okay, well, I'm going hunting. And so I had a few little loose ends to pull together, mainly just grab a few groceries, some emergency to try to drink as much of that as I could, and then my ice chest and that kind of thing, and just throw it all. I had most of it in the back of the truck ready to go anyway, and took off and finally got out of here, I don't know, probably about 10:30. And so I've been on the road all day. It is 9 o'clock. I'm driving, getting close
I'm going to probably sleep in the truck tonight since it's pretty mild, and it's going to be pretty mild in the next few days. And if I feel pretty comfortable tonight, then I'll stay probably in the truck. Otherwise, if I get real uncomfortable, I may just get a hotel the next few nights. But I'm really hoping that so I found out on the way, and you kind of know this, but I found out on the way that a piece of permission property that you and I had really good success with that still holds one of our heads-up decoys on. It is now closed to me. I cannot hunt this property because there's going to be hunters on it, and found that out earlier today. So I've been scrambling, game planning with our buddy that lives up here, and it's kind of helped us understand the landscape and the habits of these deer a little bit better. He and I have been game planning some stuff, looking at map dots, going back and forth, for like hours today. And, and so we think we have a pretty good plan for tomorrow. It's kind of nasty and rainy and like 41 right now. So it's not like super cold, but cool and rainy. And I'm hoping that that rain kind of subsides. It's supposed to subside tonight and give me an opportunity to see some sunshine in the morning and hopefully some cruising bucks along some ridges that are leaving ag. So I'm not really looking forward to the mile and a quarter or whatever it is going to be in there. Straight line, that's what it is kind of. So it's probably a little bit further, but then I don't have my steps. Somehow I ended up in the rush that was leaving Kansas. I left those steps in the back of your truck.
Yeah,
and
I don't even know how he ended up in there because I don't know. But I saw him in there this morning, and then I saw that you were on the road, and I was like, that's not good.
Yeah, so, I've got sticks. I've carried some backups, so.
Yeah, that's good.
I've got them. I just, I got to get everything organized here in a minute when I get to my parking lot or whatever I'm going to stay at and sit and sleep in the truck and get everything organized so that I can haul out pretty early in the morning and make the long trip back there. Yeah. Not looking super forward to it because it's just one of those things. You know how it is, man. I like doing that thing in the afternoon where you can see better and you know what's going on and which trees are in the way that aren't. A
little encouragement though is that like the trees, especially on those ridges. It's not like East Texas. There's not a lot of undergrowth and understory. So almost every tree you can get shots out of. Maybe it's not the perfect tree for the trail and everything, but, you can get pretty close. And I think that maybe, I don't know, they've had some weather, and maybe by this time of year there's a decent amount of trails up there on the ridges. And maybe you'll be able to see some of that stuff, in the dark with your headlamp and be able to set up, So. Yeah,
we noticed that kind of as we were leaving after we'd had 2 snows that, like, that makes the ground pretty soft, and those big old deer in the Midwest can really put a dent in a trail pretty quick whenever that starts happening. And so I definitely noticed that as we were leaving, is that the trails were getting better. Not to mention, like, they're not just cruising nonstop in late October. They're kind of still homebodies, and so now hopefully these trails will be worn in a little bit. And
I think it's going to be rocking and rolling, dude. I think it's going to be awesome.
The word is they're moving pretty good up here right now. So if that's the case, man, my ideal situation is to kill tomorrow morning, kind of enjoy the afternoon, maybe see our buddy. He said he'd help me drag it out and maybe eat lunch with him and take a few pictures and maybe get headed towards Kansas. I don't know.
Yeah, that's cool,
if that's the case, then maybe you and I can spend some time in Kansas again together.
Yeah, that would be nice, man, for sure. Because I've got the video thing handled on my own, but I've been kind of scrambling, like maybe putting my chickens before my eggs here. But I don't have any ability to take good pictures if I do kill a deer. So I'm like, what am I going to do? Yeah. I might have to borrow a camera from somebody or something if you hadn't tagged out yet. But I don't know. Yeah. That's a problem that we'll address later. But I do like to be optimistic like that. So
it's kind of like going to it'd be like kind of going to the deer stand without arrows because you don't want to jinx yourself from shooting a deer.
Exactly.
What I
mean? So
kind of got to have it.
That's right, man. But, well, we have another optimistic friend, and his name is Anthony Warren, and he has good reason for optimism because The dude knows how to kill some deer, apparently.
Dude, he's been on a streak, man. So I think we should probably get him on the phone here and let him tell his stories, because as of right now, they're a little bit better than what we've got.
Well, hopefully you can put a change to that, or send that tide a different direction here pretty soon, and maybe Anthony will have some ideas that'll help.
Yep. I would make note that I just saw a red fox, so maybe that's good luck.
That is good luck. Hopefully he wasn't squished on a bridge somewhere.
No, he was. No, that's a different one.
Yeah.
This one was alive and well, it looked
good
like.
Good deal,
so.
Man. Good deal.
Yep. Anyway, well, let's get Anthony on the phone.
All right.
Today, I'm driving to Iowa. KC is in Texas, cleaning house, and our good buddy Anthony Warren is in Tennessee, right? Or is it Kentucky?
Yeah, I am. But if you actually step out of my backyard, you are in fact in Kentucky.
Dadgummit, man. Well, you're just kind of all over the place, man. I think the last time we talked to you was on the podcast a couple months ago, maybe, and you were still in Missouri. And now you got this. I mean, are you just living this dream life where you have like multiple homes all over across the U.S., maybe across the world?
Well, I am living a dream, but I don't know if it's the dream life.
Okay.
But no, it's really not bad. But yeah, a couple months ago, we did that hunt in Nebraska, and like 2 weeks after that, I've relocated to Tennessee, stationed at Fort Campbell, which kind of, if you ask anybody, they will say Fort Campbell, Kentucky. But the base actually, like 2/3 of it's in Tennessee, and then about 1/3 of it is in Kentucky. So I live right here, pretty much touch the Kentucky line. And yeah, I'm kind of fortunate that, I can draw, or not really draw, but I can have a resident license in both states.
Dude, that's cool, man. That's, it's just crazy. One thing I want to go ahead and inform you of, and you might know this, but all these quality deer managers that are on the internet have really tried to blast you about shooting that little velvet buck this year out in Nebraska. And so I've had to defend you several times. Well, this guy, he went active in the Army again. He's serving our country, and y'all are just hammering this guy. He might not get to hunt the rest of the year, so him putting meat in the freezer is very important for his family. And then here we go. You have one long weekend, a couple weekends ago, and you're just slocking deer everywhere, man. Monster bucks. No telling how much meat you've got in your freezer right now. So
yeah, it's
the story, or I guess part of it is out. I need the entire story now, man. Tell us, because Casey and I, we just know a little bit about what happened, but dude, you went on one of the sickest sprees that I've heard of all season, man.
Thanks. Well, I'd love to say, that I'm some, great hunter or anything like that, but I really think there was more just some luck involved. I had actually a 4-day weekend, for my unit, and basically I talked my supervisor into letting me cut out a day early, so I was able to stretch that into a 5-day weekend. I got off work on a Wednesday at 5 p.m., had all my stuff waiting to go, and just threw it in the truck and drove all the way to Kansas, to where my lease is, and ended up getting in at 1:15 in the morning. So, I drove through a storm getting there, and I just felt good. Even though I do have a lease that I'm on out there, I still hunted some public ground out there, and I had some real good info from last year. And I just felt good about the wind. I felt good about the rain that was going to be passing through, shortly after I got there. I just knew that there was a lot of things that were going to add up and hopefully lead to me being successful, but in no way did I imagine that I'd have the day that I did. That was the 7th of November. So, I pretty much got into camp, got like 2 hours of sleep, woke up at 4:30, hopped in the shower, got all my stuff ready, and just because I didn't know where anybody else was hunting that was on the lease, I was like, well, I'm just going to go to this public ground and just see what happens. So I get everything going, hop in the truck, and I pull up, and it's not too far away from the farm. And as I was just about ready to kind of head into the walk-in ground, this farm truck pulls up, and this guy, first thing he does, he pops his head out, and he looks at my license plate, and he looks at me and says, "Oh, you about to go in there and hunt?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so." And he's like, "Oh, ain't no big bucks in there. I only seen a little basket rack 8." And and I'm kind of the mind, I've been BS'd a good bit, and I just kind of played it off. I was like, well, I don't know, it's getting kind of late, and I just probably ought to get set somewhere. And he's like, I'd go across the road if I were you,
Why don't you go?
Yeah. And I asked him before I left, I said, do you hunt this? And he's like, no, I live right over here, and kind of, figured it out that his property actually touched this walk-in ground. And I imagine that a lot of the deer that I ended up seeing, he probably sees as well. And so he was probably a little guarded. But I kind of knew that he was blowing smoke, and I just played it off as, I was a big dummy or something. I was like, well, I'm going to go in here and hunt. I got anything better to do. It's getting late. I kind of knew as I was walking, I was like, man, this sucker, he's trying to play me as a fool. So, long story short, I walk in. It's a pretty good little walk. It's not woody or anything, and the property actually looks pretty marginal. If you were to say, man, I want to hunt a piece of ground in Kansas, and you start naming off the metrics that you want a place to have, it doesn't really have a whole lot, but what it does have is it has a pretty good block of private that's just north of it, and it is an ag field. But outside of that, it's pretty open on at least 3 sides of it. There's a tree line on each side of this particular ag field. And just the wind that I had, which I believe was a northeast wind, it sets up just perfect to hunt the northwest corner of the property. And so, I pretty much walked in through what would be just a field that they keep cattle in, and crossing the fence over and setting up. And I felt like I got in there pretty good, didn't make a whole lot of racket. And, before I know it, I see a doe, and it's kind of about 10 minutes into legal shooting light. So I just grabbed my bow, and I'm like, man, I know what this means. On November 7th, there's not generally a doe walking by herself.
Yeah.
This time of year. And sure enough, I had a buck, and I throw the binos up. I got my bow in my left hand and my binos in my right, and I'm looking, and it's still dark enough that I can't really tell what the deer is. And I'm like, well, he's kind of short. I think he's a young deer. And about the time that, I kind of was like, I'm probably not going to shoot that deer. I looked down, and his doe is right underneath me. I mean, I could have spit on her and hit her, and I think she caught a little bit of my ground scent, and she just turned off. And then he started following her, and then it wasn't until he kind of got out of the trees and into the daylight that I realized that he was a pretty dang good buck, and I was kind of wondering if I was going to regret not shooting him, but it was kind of late at that point. So I just know that anything can happen on November 7th, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, well, there will be another opportunity. And I think I was texting one of you guys, but it was just it was like a fire hydrant had turned on, and it was just buck after buck after buck. And unfortunately, I kind of found myself a little out of position. Had I been in one of the other few trees that was around me, I probably would have had a shot. And we're talking about a difference of 10 yards maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't seeing very many does, but it was just buck after buck. And as things kind of slowed down, I decided around like 9:30, 9:35ish that I was going to get down, and I actually started saddle hunting this year. So what I was going to do is just move my platform 10 yards to the north, and I was going to hop down, run and grab some breakfast real quick, and I was going to get back in the stand by noon. And anyhow, I'm up in this other tree, and my bow and my backpack and everything is down at the base of the tree that I was just in. And anyhow, I had made some noise, kind of breaking off, a couple little branches that were in the way. And I climbed down, and I'm strapping my climbing sticks to my backpack, and I hear something over my right shoulder, and I turn around, and I am nose to nose with probably 130, 135 inch 8-point. And yeah, so I think we both scared the mess out of each other equally. He took off. I had to use the bathroom. And anyhow, I watched him run off. He runs to 40 yards, just acts like I'm not even there, puts his head back to the ground and takes off. So that was kind of my morning hunt. But at that point in time, I think I had already seen, 11 bucks and 2 does is what I think the count was that I was at. And so it was just a pretty incredible morning, but, hands down the best action I'd ever seen in a morning hunt in November in my life. So,
So what happened next? You just saw a bunch of action, or did you shoot a buck?
Yeah.
He called me to brag is what he did.
Well, I called KC because I knew KC was heading up to Kansas to meet you. And it, when you have a morning like that, you just got to talk to your buddies about it. It's one of those special days that, and you don't never know how many of those you may actually get, in your lifetime. But anyhow, I went back, ate some breakfast, and my buddy, he was there, and he was like, "Hey, I need to go hang a stand. You want to help me?" And I was like, no, man, I can't. I got to get back in the stand. Plus, I think he makes a career out of putting up a stand. So
that's how I feel.
I just knew, I just needed to get back. So I think I got back in around 12:30, and I was at that new stand. And sure enough, as I'm kind of climbing the tree, I look up, and there's a deer, and I'm probably 3 foot off the ground. And it's a little 2.5-year-old buck, and he just stares at me, and I'm like, man, I hate to bust this deer, but at the same point in time, I really need to get up in this tree, because if a big buck does that, I need to be ready. So anyhow, I climbed the tree. I don't guess he really understands what I am, and he just moseys off. And those hours between noon and I think it was probably around about 3 p.m. or so, they were pretty slow. And so right around 3:15 or so, I look up, and there was a doe. And well, let me back up. And it's going to sound like it's not really part of the story, but it kind of matters a little bit. So right probably 15 minutes before I saw that doe, I see this bobcat walk right underneath me, and he's walking out in the field. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And anyhow, 15-20 minutes goes by, and I look up and I see that doe, and then all of a sudden, here comes this bobcat with either like a squirrel or a bird in his mouth, and it's like walking straight at this doe. Well, this doe, she's at 30 yards, and she blows at this bobcat. Doesn't really take off, but she kind of jumps back, and then, the bobcat goes on his way. And about 15 seconds later, you hear another deer below, and I'm like, man, there are deer all over here, and I felt like I was pretty close to the bedding area. And all of a sudden, this doe looks up, and she looks back toward that where that other deer blew, and I'm like, man, that might be a buck, the way she's acting. And sure enough, I just see tines just explode out of the brush and run in. And I went to pull my binos up, and I just saw the deer and saw his body, and I just dropped my binos. I didn't even look at the deer. I was like, that's probably the biggest deer I may have the opportunity to shoot in a long time. And anyhow, I come to full draw, and this sucker comes downwind of the doe, and I need him to take another like 2 steps probably to where I could shoot through this little lane that was probably about 3 feet wide, and he walks straight away from me at that point. And he is probably 155 inch, 8 or 9 point, just huge frame, probably 13 inch G2s. His main beams stick out well past his nose, and just a tank of a body. And anyhow, he chases her off, and about 15 minutes, I see them come out on the opposite side of this ag field and just stroll down this tree line that, had the wind have been right and whatnot, I probably would have sat there. And he just strolls down there, and they disappear. And I'm just sick to my stomach. I'm like, man, how do you come to full draw on an animal like that? You can't seal the deal. And anyhow, I got to thinking, and I'm like, well, I'm going to stay positive. It is the rut. And then I thought about something that Tyler has said quite a bit, and I know Tyler got this from his dad, but it just resonates with me. It's like, you will kill as many big bucks as God intends you to kill. And I just said that. I said that to myself, and I went, I just felt peaceful about it. I was still upset, but I just was like, okay, well, God has another plan, and I'm going to kill a better buck. About that time, the rest of the deer kind of just started moving, and it just seemed like deer were coming out everywhere. I had a couple bucks come out on the other side of the field as well again, and I had a real nice 10 point, and I think he'll probably go, around 140, 145. And then he was kind of just, piddling around out in the field on the far side. And all of a sudden I look up, and I've got, doe after doe after doe. I think there was probably 6 to 8 of them. They came right underneath my stand out in the corner of the field. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, all right, I just need a buck to follow them, and I can probably have a 10-yard chip shot. And then I start saying to myself, I was like, well, it'd be really cool if this 10 point across the field, if he would just come over here to try and check out one of these does. And no sooner than I thought that, he just starts sprinting across the field. Man. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this could happen. All those does were perfectly in my shooting window, and I was like, man, this could set up real well. So I grabbed my bow, and I'm going to do basically a 360 so that I could get to where I could shoot through this lane. And as I do that, I hear something right behind me underneath my stand, and it's a doe, and she'd come from a different direction from all these other does that had came out. And I was like, well, she's by herself, and she shouldn't be by herself, whether she's got a buck or other does. And anyhow, I look up, and it was that buck that I had seen very first thing that morning. And I finally got to see him, and he was a lot bigger than I really anticipated. When that I thought he was in the morning time, and his body was he was a tank. So he comes in, and there's kind of like a little ditch line that's always full of water, and it's just 5 or 6 yards to the north of the tree that I'm in. And I'm like, well, he's going to cross that ditch and come around me, and I'm probably going to have a 10 to 15 yard shot. It would be a good, good shot and everything. and there's this tree that's kind of laid over. I guess it was blown down, and he starts walking toward it, and I'm like, there's no way that he is going to go under that tree. And he literally goes down on his elbows, or whatever you call it, on a deer, his hocks, and he goes completely under that tree. And I'm like, I can't believe that. I would have never thought that he would have done that. And at this point in time, he's probably about 10 yards away, but not quite in my shooting lane. So I draw back, and he's got basically like a little sapling that's covering his vitals and everything. And I'm just sitting there at full draw, and I'm like, okay, any second he's just going to step out, and it's game over. And I was probably at draw for like 2.5 minutes, and I think he may have smelled something and just wasn't sure. But at the end of it, he, I don't know if it was me or what, but he was definitely smelling something. And anyhow, I released from full draw, and I'm just sitting there watching, and he starts taking another step, and I come to full draw again. He steps down into that little ditch, and he's at like 7 yards now, and I just drilled him. I got a complete pass through. He jumps across that ditch, and he stands at the border of the private and the public ground, and he looked pretty hurt, and he just starts coughing. And I'm like, oh, he might go down right there. Well, he started trying to walk it off, and then he went to go run, and he just tumbled down.
Oh, man.
So yeah, he probably went 15 yards from where I shot him, and I think about 21, 22 yards from the tree I was in. So
oh my goodness.
Just one of those shots that like you just hope for as a bow hunter, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it was quick, and just really couldn't have asked for anything better. As far as like just a total experience, being able to see that many deer and that sort of action, and thinking that the highs and the lows, thinking I'm about to shoot a 155, 160 inch buck, to him running out of my life, to real nice 10-point across the field that's kind of reading the script, to just kind of having the I guess the eggs in the basket right there below me. And I knew at that point, I felt like the deer I ended up shooting was more mature than the other deer. Maybe a year older. But also I'm not going to I'm not going to, miss out on an opportunity like that to try and maybe shoot a different deer. And at the end of the day, it all happened on public land, and it was, there's not to toot a horn about public land, but it is cool when you can just go to a place, whether it be public or private, and do the kind of scouting and reap the benefits of a really awesome hunt. And so I was just no matter what, it's going to be one of my biggest accomplishments as a bow hunter. And plus, I think I don't know exactly what he scores, and it doesn't really matter, but my buddy that was there at camp, I think he scored him at like 139 or 140. And so it's just cool that, I ended up killing my first Pope and Young buck,
Man.
After all these years of just trying to get it done out in Kansas. So
it's awesome, dude.
Yeah, man.
It's just crazy cool, man. The public land aspect is cool. You made a good point about the kind of like more just whether it's public or private, just being able to go in and figure something out pretty quick and make it happen. I think that's awesome. And speaking of that, like, your good luck that weekend didn't end there, right?
No. So I actually had a buddy that I grew up and went to school with. His name's Derek Welch, and I took him hunting last year for the first time, and he rifle hunted and killed a doe up there on our place. And he told me, he's like, well, I'm gonna start archery hunting. So he bought a bow like last Christmas and started practicing. And I told him, I said, well, if you want to hunt up here, you need to draw a buck tag. And basically he did everything. He came up, and he actually met me that night that I shot my buck, and he helped me take care of it. So that was cool. And kind of my goal for the rest of the trip was just to get him a buck, and basically it wasn't the 8th. We hunted all day on the 8th together, and then the morning of the 9th, I wasn't feeling very good, and I kind of just said, hey, I would hunt over here in this creek system, and it wasn't too far away from, where I had hunted, and basically he went there and killed a pretty good, what I believe is a 3.5-year-old buck, and so that was awesome. Basically, yeah, I mean, heck, the first deer that dude ever drew back on and killed was a buck, so he was like 100%, which
did you get any guide fees for that?
Do what?
Did you get any guide fees for that or anything?
I should. I should say, hey, man, you forgot to tip your outfitter.
That's right.
So anyhow, I was super pumped up, but kind of at that point, I think that was that was Saturday morning, and we both decided, we're like, hey, if we can both go home, we'll go home, and because I had to be back by Mondays when I had to be back. So he's like, yeah, I'm gonna head home, and then and I was like, all right, I'll head home. But I kind of just jokingly said I might go hunt this farm that I have permission on over in Missouri, where I pretty close to where I was living. And he was like, oh, well. You should, and I kind of was like, all right, well, I'm going to. So I ended up going out the next morning, getting there in time, and basically I've hunted that property a couple times, and one of the really good things about that property is that it's like 250 acres, and there's not a whole lot of timber on the place, but what it does have is quite a bit of ag, and it's got I think 1 or 2 fields that are completely interior. And so it can't be seen from any roadways or anything. And so the deer, they always feel, real safe and secure, like traveling those field edges, just knowing that, people can't see them. And, I pretty much, went in, and I didn't really have high expectations, but, as the morning was kind of winding down, I saw, a flash of antlers. And I said, like, man, that's a good buck. And I was kind of watching him, and I see another deer come out in the field, and I kind of look at that deer, and it was a younger buck. And then, I looked back, and that buck was gone, but he had stood in one spot for quite a while, and it was kind of in a real brushy part of a fence row. And I was like, I bet that he bedded right there. So I get down out of the tree, and I'm going to go and get some lunch. And I'm just thinking about how I'm going to try and hunt this deer, because the wind was going to switch, but it was, I felt like I was barely going to cut the corner on the wind, meaning that, like, there's a chance this deer could smell me, but at that point I really didn't care, because, I had one, I basically had one more hunt, and then I had to head home. So, I was kind of aggressive. That afternoon I got in early, didn't make any noise. I felt like, the wind was blowing enough where I could sneak in, and basically I felt like I was close to 80 yards away from where I'd seen this buck. And I get set up, and I wait, and it was warmer that day, and so I was like, man, I'm not seeing anything. And then, I don't know, 15 minutes before legal shooting light was over, I see a couple of does come out on the far side of the field, and then I see a young buck, and I'm like, well, dang, that's it. I'm done. And all of a sudden it's getting to where it's getting to be crunch time, and I see this movement through kind of some branches in my tree, and I pull up the binos and I drop them, like, oh, it's just a doe. And anyhow, the deer makes it to my opening, and I raise my binos again. It's just kind of like cool just watching deer, and so I was like, oh, I'm just gonna watch this doe walk right by me. And sure enough, like, all I could see was his G2s, and
oh no,
yeah, and
that doe had G2s.
I was like, uh-oh, that's that deer. So I just dropped my binos and I grabbed my bow, and it happened so fast. I think, I would have had about 5 seconds really to make something happen. By the time he made it completely through my window, but he was at, I think he was at 25 yards, and I ended up drawing back, grunt stopping him, and I shot, and I actually spined him. And so, kind of not what I intended to do, but, I didn't obviously have to track him.
Yeah.
I did, follow up and put a lethal shot on him, but I was just really at a loss for words because it happened so quickly, and I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, I don't know what that deer is, but he is big. And anyhow, I get down from the tree, and I was like, I'm afraid just to even walk over there. So I finally walk over, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know exactly what he'll score, by the time I get him back, but I think I kind of rough scored him, and he was right at 134-ish, 135. So, I'll be conservative and say he'll definitely, make that 130 mark again.
It's pretty much an 8, right?
Yeah, well, he's a 9. Is what he's got. He's got one tine on his left side. I think he's a little crab claw at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and his G2 is right at almost 12 inches. So,
golly.
Yeah. Which, after the fact, I kind of realized that he was a younger deer, but just the fact that I don't get to hunt that farm, and that's the first. He's not the first buck I've ever seen, but on that place, because there have been some good deer over there over the years, but he's definitely the first buck that I've actually had a chance to take off of that property. And like I said, everything happened so quickly, but I'm so stinking proud of that deer.
Oh, you better be.
And I'm just still mind blown that I killed 2 Pope and Young bucks 3 days apart.
Dude, you might be the only guy I know, even remotely know, who has done that this season. The Pope and Young double in a weekend is just awesome, dude. Mm-hmm. It's a testament to some of your perseverance and the hard work that you'll put into things. I mean, quite honestly, I don't know what character trait this is, but if I shot the deer you did in Kansas, I might just be like, I'll go home. I'm happy. You know what I mean? But yeah, I guess it's the hunger that you still have, and that's cool, man. You mentioned earlier how you'd gone to a saddle this season. And I know it's all the rage and everybody's talking about it, but a lot of times that's for good reason, right? Because it seems to be a pretty effective tool.
Right.
How did saddle hunting impact your ability to get in on these deer this year?
Well, in large part, it's I don't think in the grand scheme of things, which not to name drop or anything, but I hunted out of a lone wolf last year, and it's definitely a great stand, and I probably could have done the same exact thing out of that stand. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I know that saddle hunting has done for me this year is it's definitely made it easier. It's made my payload a lot less, and it's just quieter. I think it's just a quieter system. You're not really clanking stands around or stuff like that. And then I guess the one thing is the buck I killed in Kansas when I did move to that other tree. It wasn't exactly an ideal tree to put a tree stand in. Mm-hmm. Basically, tree stands are kind of limited by, if it's a crooked tree, you may not put a stand in there, or it may just sit kind of cattywampus or whatever. And so I think the saddle definitely gives you an advantage. And I know it's kind of like the hot thing right now. Everybody's saddle hunting, but it's definitely, I think a game changer, and more so I've used it locally, just because I have been, everybody says, they walk a mile. I don't quite walk a mile where I hunt here, but I do have about, probably 300 feet of elevation change and probably a half a mile. And part of that is like, if I don't have to have a stand on my back, snagging limbs and everything, like it's just going to work better. And kind of going back to mine and Tyler's hunt in Nebraska, I didn't have the saddle yet, and it was a pain in the butt walking through some of that brush with a tree stand. I know Tyler can attest to that, but like we got our butts whooped a couple times just getting tangled up. But yeah, I mean it has kind of helped out quite a bit this year, and I just like the mobility and the ease of use of the actual saddle. So
this might be kind of a weird question on it, but do you feel like scent control is easier or more difficult with a saddle?
I don't really have an answer for that.
Yeah. It is a weird question, so sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I did have, I don't know. I'm such a kind of like a fanatic about like trying to be as scent free as possible. And, I don't know. What I do know is that if you can get high enough in a tree, and what I did see, a couple of times so far this year is if you get high enough in a tree, and a deer comes close enough, hopefully your scent can just blow over them. But I'm always trying to hunt the wind, and even if it's cutting it close, like I'm not afraid to do that. But I'm always hunting the wind and kind of have my scent regimen that I go through to before I go get in the woods. So
one of the things I could see with it that would be interesting is that you could put your tree stand setup can go inside of an ozone bag, and just treat that thing, and you're pretty much done for. Whereas like with a tree stand, it's not like it's getting a bunch of scent or whatnot, but you're touching it with your hands a whole bunch and your feet go on it. And I don't know, it's just something else.
Or it just, you throw it in the back of your truck and no telling. You may have had gasoline in the back of your truck months ago.
Very well could have, yes.
But yeah. I mean, definitely it is kind of neat. I've been questioned by a couple other guys hunting public land around here. They're like, well, where's your stand at? And I'm like, well, I'm kind of wearing it, and everybody, kind of everybody around here does the whole climbing tree stand deal and and whatnot. So it's kind of they just kind of look at you funny when you're like, oh, I'm saddle hunting. They're like, what is that?
So I think, like, knowing you, I think that you're a good decision maker. Like, you're methodical, you think deeply about things, but you still also are aggressive and assertive when you need to be. And this may be something that comes from the military, but with that being said, can you kind of talk about finding the tree? Because I feel like you and I are pretty similar in the way we think about things sometimes. And I think that, like, one of the struggles is, like, you don't want to lay down a bunch of ground scent, but when you go into a new place, you want to make sure that you choose the right tree. And there's always that, like, kind of want to, like, oh, should I go an extra 40 yards and see what's over there, and see how that looks. So can you kind of talk about that and like what leads up to that, as far as maybe that maybe map scouting or whatever it is?
So it's kind of a loaded question, and I'll kind of try to go through it as best I can, and as thoroughly as I can, without being too long-winded. But everything is different as far as like landscape goes, and for me personally, right now, I'm really actually trying to relearn how to hunt, kind of for the way that the terrain is around here. But kind of if I were going to be in the Midwest and I was going to look at something, obviously pinch points and funnels are going to be the biggest thing. And then my thought process goes to, okay, how could I hunt this spot, and how can I access this spot on a given wind? And then if I can, I'd like to try and have multiple entry and exit strategies. So whether I come in from the north, if it's a south wind, or come in from the south on a north wind, I want to definitely look at that. And then kind of the next thing that I think of is, I want to get into a tree, and I don't want to overanalyze. I could be in this tree or anything like that. I just want to get up in a tree where I feel like deer are gonna, walk by there. I just want to be in a deer area, as Casey likes to call it.
That's right.
So, kind of once I do that, I know, I've got the wind right. I've got set up in the tree as quietly as I could get. And next thing I'm going to do is start kind of looking at my lanes and stuff like that. And sometimes you're wrong. I've definitely, sat in a stand before and just didn't ever have an opportunity because I was either, 10 yards at a place or, even 50 yards at a place, kind of like I found myself this evening. But the biggest thing is like when you're somewhere is like, don't be afraid to get a little aggressive and like make a move. If it takes me 15, 20 minutes to hang all my stuff in a stand and I see a bunch of deer going somewhere else, like, you know what, I'm probably going to get down and go to where those deer are and hang my stuff there. And I've only lost, probably 30 minutes of time. And I just feel like the more guys spend, and like definitely this year has been an anomaly for me. Like I never would have thought in a million years that I would have had the opportunities I did this year, but I was kind of coming from it at a different angle. This year is like, hey, I've kind of got this full-time military gig going on now, and I'm not going to have the same amount of time that I would on another year to go hunt. So if 5 days is all I have, well, then I'm going to look at everything from a very anecdotal standpoint. I'm going to try and do the things that I can control, like hunt good winds and, put myself in as good a position as I can, but I'm also going to get aggressive. So if that means that maybe the wind isn't 100% perfect and there's a 10% chance that a buck could come from my downwind side and win me, like I'm going to do that because when you only have 5 days or a week to hunt, you don't really know how many opportunities you're going to get. And so I kind of err on the aggressive side more often than not. But in a large part of going back kind of to what I'm learning now with this new area that I've been hunting over here in Tennessee and the Kentucky area is that the first thing that I'm going to look for is food. And if I can find food, then I'm just going to backwards plan from that food. And so kind of what I've seen here is we've got a lot of, oaks and acorns around here. There is some ag, but one of the big predominant features that we've got out here is these big ridges. And so my gut tells me that those deer are going to use those ridges at some point in time to move, wherever they're going to go. And so my first step in analyzing something like that is to kind of side hill the ridge and see if I can find any sign, because it's kind of a scientific deal that deer a lot of times stick to the military crest or the upper third, and then I'm going to make adjustments from there. So, I just think, be a little aggressive. Don't be afraid to do something different. It is kind of scary at first when you're really used to hunting, agriculture and field, pinch points and field edges and stuff like that. But, I hear a lot of guys say, well, there's no big bucks around here. Well, maybe they're not going to where the big bucks like to be. And typically the big bucks don't like to be in a field edge next to a main, road.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe maybe you need to be back off of that field edge in the timber, and maybe there's something like a creek or some contour line or something that you're just not seeing that would be a cue. And so I don't know, the biggest thing that I do is I try to put a lot of time in studying maps and that sort of stuff. That way I can be prepared and I can disqualify the places where I'm not going to hunt. So if I see something, I'm not afraid to make a move and adjust to whatever the deer are doing.
Yeah. And that whole, you and I have talked about this probably in the last couple of days, but just the whole aggressive thing, it's a lot easier to do when you've got multiple pieces of property, whether that's private or public. And so setting yourself up that way can be pretty fun. Granted, if you've got a really giant deer on one piece of property, you can be kind of conservative with it if it's private and work your way in. But that's one reason to give yourself several options, whether that's knocking on doors, cold calling, or just finding pieces of public in the area, to give yourself multiple different pieces of property that are separate from each other, so that if you mess one up by being too aggressive, you still have options to go shoot a different deer. So
right.
Yeah, to me, that's just a case in point with your Kansas situation there. You've got a lease, but you went and killed a Pope and Young class deer that's probably 5 years old on a piece of public because that was one of your extra options. So awesome story, dude. I'm super proud of you, man, and just so excited for you, man. I think it's just one of the coolest stories of the season, man, that I've heard, and just glad that your season's turning out good, and hoping that after talking to you tonight that the luck will rub off on me, and when I head in 1.25 miles tomorrow that I'll have similar luck.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely feel for you. I know those long walks are not the funnest, but
I don't have a saddle either.
Yeah, hopefully it pays off for you, and then you're going to be calling me, and I'm going to have to host you giving your big buck breakdown.
There we go. That's a pretty good idea, man. I mean, you've got the intro down, so.
That's right.
I've listened to a few episodes.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. We feel your support, man. We see that one download from Tennessee every week, man.
That's
anyway,
me.
Yep. Well, dude, awesome deal. Thanks for coming on and spending the time with us this evening, and good luck over in Tennessee this year, man.
Hey, thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yep.
Sure thing, dude.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. Kansas and Missouri bucks all within a couple of days. I guess technically 3 bucks, and I guess if you make a loop up northward, if he was just to make a loop up northward, he would have ended up in Iowa, which is where I'm at. And we were actually here, I guess, late October, and so there's 4 videos from that trip in a series that are releasing right now. So if you're interested in checking that out, we had some pretty sick, nasty encounters. One evening in particular, I think it's going to be the 3rd video maybe of that series, where bucks were squaring off like big bucks, man, and it makes me sick to even talk about it.
Yeah,
I can't go back there.
Yeah, man. Well, hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully, it's for the best, man. It is for the best, no matter what. But selfishly, we want you to kill a big buck. So maybe this is going to force you into going and trying a new place that's going to pay big dividends. I think that there's a good chance for it.
Oh, yeah, I hope so too, man. And to be honest, I don't think necessarily, I'm not the type that necessarily thinks that, it just means I'm going to kill a bigger deer. But, I would be happy with just a solid deer, even if he is a little bit smaller than either one of those deer that we were chasing on those properties. So, I just want to shoot a nice, solid, somewhat mature buck. I mean, when I say that, a big 3-year-old's probably gonna get smoked, So, Anyway, that's just what it is, man. But I've gotten some of my Iowa experience, and I'm going to get a full experience tomorrow when I head in for that long trip and by myself with the sticks and everything. So anyway, I guess, you can see the October stuff coming up after that, depending on how lucky I am on this trip hunting deer. I'm going to get to the Texas videos, and that's a pretty cool series. I think you guys will enjoy.
Yeah.
So
anyways. Like we are all very excited about that because I wasn't there for that one,
Yeah.
So you've shown me a little bit of stuff, but I know that it just gets pretty epic whenever you put it into like a timeline and make a video out of it. So I'm pretty stoked for that one, man.
It's gonna be cool, man. Another point that I would make, that not point, but just a little thing to note, is I went. You know how I told you I may have even said this in the podcast. I think I did, but the last morning in Kansas, I was sitting there doing my wrap up interview, and that buck came through.
Yeah,
I kind of glimpsed at that clip on the camera before I formatted the card this morning. Buck is big, dude, and he ain't just an 8-point.
Ooh.
I know for sure he's got a G4 on his right side. Ooh. And he's heavy, and he's got looking like some good main beams, and I'm just like, this deer is bigger than I thought, and it makes me want to cry more than I thought.
Ooh.
So
I'm interested to see him because I don't know how the timeline all works out or whatnot, but it might be a deer that we've seen before.
Yeah.
And we'll have to talk more about that off the air.
Yeah, we will. We will. So anyway, well, there's a lot of cool stuff coming out. We're putting it out as much as we can. I'm really just enjoying as much hunting as I can in November, and every day that I'm off out of the woods, I'm trying to get some edited footage to you guys. So I hope you can have some patience, and in the meantime, watch some of our good buddies who are putting out some stuff right now too. So anyway, God bless you guys, and remember, this is your element.
Living it.
Meet you on the other side. I'm not sure why we even have to fight. We grew up in the same situation. The river between us caused a lot of frustration. Brothers, let's forgive and forget. There's blood in the river, and that's why they call it the red. There's blood in the river, and that's why they call it the red.
Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some Meat Eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls. I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like them. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.